Now, now that we're past our brief little mindfulness get focused moment, I wanted to talk about. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Our self narratives. Sometimes our stuck stories. So how these stories can kind of box us in. And if you don't have a pen and paper, I'd love for you to get one, to have one nearby, to jot down what immediately comes to your brain when I ask these questions. And there's no judgment. Again, that's another one of those practicing in deep breathing and mindfulness, is that there's no judgment. It's just what immediately comes to your brain. It is what it is. That's what we're dealing with. Because the reality is better than creating a story, right? So self-narratives are a part of being human. The I am this, I never this, I can't that, like that's a part of being human. We're never going to be able to get rid of those. And they're not necessarily something we should get rid of. It's just a part of being human. Okay. So, but they can and very often have a tendency of boxing us into these self-narratives that we build around ourselves. And we've talked a lot about this over the years, but things like I am, I never, I can't, they are clues for us that we see ourselves through a lens of self as content instead of a healthier sense of self as context. So what I mean by that is we create these stories that we are what we create. We are the content of all of our lives all put together into this person that I am. When really we are a person in the broader world, in a broader context. We're much more complex than just the sum of all of our parts and all of our stories and traumas and victories, right? We are much broader. We have a self as context instead of self as just content pieces. So when we're aware of what these stories are, we can notice them so that we aren't constrained by them. So it's not that I'm asking you to get rid of them. I'm just asking you to notice them and be aware that they're there so that we can make different choices that are, or maybe the same choices that are in line with the direction that we want to go, right? So when you first hear this, I am blank, fill in the blank. I am blank. I am blank. I never blank. I always blank. So I am, I never, I always, I don't blank. And then I can't blank. I am, I never, I always, I don't, I can't. So as you're thinking through some of those, I just would like to point out some of them may be positive. Some of them may be negative. Some of them, and again, this is not a judgment of right or wrong. Having positive ones is often a really great thing if we have positive self stories. But even those stories, if we hold them too rigidly, can become frustrating. So like, say yours is, I'm really good at recruiting. I'm a really good recruiter. So say you have a bad month and you don't have good recruitment, then your brain can often come in with these stories of, well, what does that mean about me? Am I not? And so then you're like hustling to keep that narrative in your brain that I am a good recruiter. Does it make sense? Whereas it's kind of obvious to us when it's negative, I'm not a good recruiter. That's unobvious. We're like, that's going to weigh us down and get in our heads. But even attaching too strongly to those positive stories can leave us in tension. And leave us in a place where we're not necessarily focusing on what matters to us the most. We're focusing on maintaining those narratives or changing those narratives, if that makes sense. So when you have, I am blank, I never blank, I always blank, I don't blank, I can't blank. Again, I'm just letting you be aware of those. And then, but the question is, are we always those things? Is that really true? That I am blank, I never blank, or are we more complicated than that? Because truthfully, we often are more complicated than that. Some people will put, I am a child of God. Absolutely. Absolutely you are. But do you sometimes not act like one? Right? Like, and does that leave you like all in your head, right? And the truth is we do. Like, yeah, we are a child of God and we don't always act like it. We don't always live into that wholeness that we have inside of us. So we are more complicated than these stories, these narratives that we hold in our brains about who we are, what our future looks like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can physically do it right now, or you can just mentally think about what it would look like to hold that piece of paper and those stories an inch from your nose. To just put them right here, hold it an inch from your nose, and what else can you see? The truth is it's nothing. Like, these are when we hold ourselves too closely to these narratives, to these stories, to these stuck stories, sometimes that's literally all we can see. And sometimes we can get a glance through our fingers, right? Like, we can sometimes see through the holes, but that's all we can focus on is, I have to be the best, or I am always responsible, or I never let people down. That's all we see. And then sometimes that leads us to miss parts of our lives that matter a lot. So when we are holding it so closely, it's hard to focus. So you can't see other people. You can't see their stories. You can't see behind their eyes and how they're looking at the world. We can't get in the shoes so much of the people that we're working with, because again, our story is so close. That we're often working in those moments to disprove those stories that we have or to prove them right. And when we're focusing so much on ourselves, we can't see them. We can't connect fully. So you can't see other people, their stories, the impact you could have when we only see our self-narratives. And the truth is that you are a force to be reckoned with when we can zoom out and keep those self-narratives out here so that we can still see everything on the horizon. Like, that's called a sky view, right? Our skyline view of life. When we can hold these self-narratives out here, we have much more room to do what matters to us, to show up for the goals that matter to us, not just the ones we're trying to prove right or wrong. Does that make sense? When we can see a broader perspective of life. So you are a force to be reckoned with when we can learn how to zoom out and to live into who you were made to be, not just the stories that you were made to uphold or told to uphold. And again, I'm not asking you to not have these stick stories or not stick with them or have them there. I'm just asking you to zoom out and choose your life, choose the actions that you're taking, and not let them run you ragged so much. So there's so much more to life when we can step back and listen. When we do that, we can better connect with people. We can open up in more genuine ways. And we can focus on other people and their lives better when we can see it from their perspective. And also, when we get really good at recognizing our own stuck stories, and when we've created our own problems by trying to like manipulate them or get rid of them, we can start to see that in other people. When other people are doing it, we're like, oh, yeah, I recognize that behavior. She's overcompensating for something here. She's trying to overcome this stuck story she has in her brain, or she's trying to really prove to us that she's something. And so, have you ever been around somebody who's like that? Like, you just know anybody? You can just, maybe it's my superpower. Like, I pick up on these things like intuitively. Like, I'm like, oof, she's really struggling with something. And it's because I've dealt with my own stuff, right? It's because I've seen those behaviors in myself. Okay, so the reason why I bring these stuck stories and really just these self-narratives, they're not necessarily making us stuck, but the reason I bring them up is because when we're in a place where we're defending those stories, we have a hard time seeing possibilities. And again, I recognize this because I have done it myself. When I'm in this place of recognizing, no, nope, didn't. Okay. So when we're in the middle of these stuck stories, we have a hard time seeing possibilities. And again, I've done it. I have been there. I have been defending myself in these stuck stories instead. And because of that, I couldn't see beyond myself. It was like all right here. It was all my junk that I couldn't see beyond. And so when we're in that place, we're protecting ourselves, our self-esteem, we're defending our stories, or we're trying to attempt to achieve a very specific outcome. And when we do that, we have the opportunity, well, not the opportunity, we often miss opportunities to choose to live the dream that we have for ourselves. Like, we're missing an actual dream because we're trying to manipulate to have it fit these stories. So I bring this up because, okay, first things first, this quote: we should always be thinking about not what is logically possible, but what is impossible that we can make possible. I'm going to say it again. I kind of botched it. We should always be thinking about not what is logically possible, but what is impossible that we can make possible. Okay, that's Dr. Helen Neville. So we're not thinking about what's logically possible, but what is impossible that we can make possible. Because often I get caught in, that's just not possible. That's really far-fetched. Like, that's probably not gonna happen. I think about this, and like, you guys just got off a goals call, right? I'm like the queen of make a reasonable goal so that you can achieve it. And I get that. That's so true. But that's also often I'm setting those goals because I am in a stuck story and I am not able to see the possibilities because I have my stuck story right in front of my nose. And I am not opening my brain up to solving the impossible to make it possible. And I got this fire lit under me because Trisha Rager, I don't know if you guys saw, but she went from 0 to 500 points in a month, y'all. In one stinking month, she re-entered and got 500 points. She decided on June 24th that she was going to re-enter and she was going to do it. She was going to do the dang thing. And by July 24th, she had 250 points. Okay. And then she decided, why not go for 500? In a week, she got 250 more points. In 1 week. Okay. Hello. I don't know about you, but it's been a minute since I have thought that could happen. But it could happen. There are some of you on here who could very well be emerald by the end of the summer, by the end of the fall. But if we don't have that possibility mindset, right? If we are thinking it's impossible, we're not going to see making it possible. Okay. So opening ourselves up to possibility. She talked about having, big energy on her reels, big energy when she was talking to people. She talked about working like she did at the very beginning of her business, like working really, really hard, being really intentional. And she talked about mindset and not letting any negativity in. That she said her daughter saw her big, I mean, she was really very obsessive. Like she was checking boxing off every 6 points and she was just on the money, right? She was working hard toward it. And she said her daughter came in and was like, "Oh, that looks really hard, Mom. Are you sure you're going to be able to do that?" And she was like, "Yes, I am, because I'm very good at what I do." And she was like, and she's like, "I'm not allowing any negativity in this journey that I'm in at this moment." She was like, "I'm not even talking negatively to my husband about it. Like we're just focusing on moving forward, because the negativity can really drag you down." So I'm good at what I do, she said, and she's been doing tons of parties. And she's like, don't overcomplicate it. She's like, we have these videos. We all have these 1, 2, 3 minute testimony videos that we can throw in a messenger chat, and you're doing tons of parties and inviting people, right? And she says she is listening to Jessie Lee. I don't know who that is. She said this person cusses, but she's like on the money, like every morning. So Jessie Lee, this person, I guess, has recruited over 12,000 people, level ones, 12,000 level ones. And she's like, she's never met anyone who's ever done that. And this person brings in millions of dollars a month. So maybe there's something I could learn from this person. This is like, I'm going to have to look this up. And then Daniel G on Instagram, she said, it's belief building. It gives me confidence. It's the direction that I'm going right now. And she's like, and she said, I have felt all the fear. I have felt all the shame. I have felt all the frustration in different seasons in her business, but she's decided to flip a switch. And it was really empowering to me to think through and just remind myself what my stuck stories are, so that I can be aware of what I'm not doing, because my story is too close, because I'm not zooming out and looking at the bigger, broader picture of what is possible. Does that make sense? I needed that reminder for myself of where my stuck stories are, because I have some real sticky, yucky stories up in my noggin from all these years of doing this. And it's just a part of it. We all have our stuff, and it's just a matter of moving around it and through it in order to get to what matters to us most. So let's see.
Tell me her name again. I missed that part, the beginning.
Trisha Rager.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, is that who it was?
Yep.
And what's Daniel's last name?
It's just, I think it's just Daniel G. I think that's what he goes by, is Daniel G.
And was Jessie Lee, like, is she on Instagram or podcast, you know?
I think she said it was a podcast. I haven't had a chance to look it up yet, but if you guys find it, please send it in the chat. I would love to know. So I'm curious. I'm gonna stop the recording. I'm